It's 10:37. Joining us live now is Callie Lichter, a reporter who's been covering this since day one and even during jury selection. Callie, good morning to you. I know that things were kind of a little hectic as we went into court. It happened very quick, I'll say, and then of course as that ruling was made, people started to trickle out of the court. So what can you tell us now?
Yeah, when I got a text, or, our team down here got a text from our Riley Mack, who was in the courtroom saying, guys, we're going in, and we saw some movement on that feed when we were sitting there in the media room. We were like, oh my God, it's time, but we didn't know what it was time for. A couple days ago, we saw the jury was deadlocked, was ruled today, so we didn't know if they were going to come back still deadlocked, or we were going to get a guilty or not guilty verdict. So it was just really, I keep on saying that the energy was just different today. It's been 4 days of us sitting at the courthouse anticipating a verdict, but today was kind of the day where everyone was like, all right, it feels a little bit different. It feels like something's going to happen today.
And Callie, there's a lot going on in terms of what could happen next. We kind of broken down what could happen next, but from your perspective, you've been covering this trial all along. You've also been our crime reporter here at 13 on Your Side, kind of talking about moving forward after this mistrial.
Yeah, so we've been talking about the options, Lauren, about what can come next, and that really falls on Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker on what he decides should be the next steps. He could go for a retrial, he could offer, some type of plea deal, or he could choose to, dismiss the case, say that it's over, let Christopher Schurr go free. And so it's really up to him and what he chooses to do. But, this has been going on for 3 years. Christopher Schurr was charged 3 years ago. This happened 3 years ago. There's so much which has happened in the past 3 years, from, calling in witnesses, collecting exhibits, finding people to testify out on that stand on both sides, both the prosecution and the defense. And, it depends on the judge's schedule. It depends on all these different factors. So like we've been saying, it could be a while, if it is chosen to have another trial for a retrial, it could be a long time before we see that. And, you saw in the courtroom at times how, contentious everything got with, certain witnesses who were put on the stand, particularly, how the defense wasn't quite happy that Seth Stoughton and Nick Bloomfield took the stand for the prosecution. You had those types of, moments in the courtroom, and you had some really heated cross-examinations and examinations, So it's really just a waiting game on what comes next, on what the decision is. And again, it could take a long time because this is already 3 years in the making. So again, none of us are in the minds of, the attorneys in the case, and we can all speculate. But really at this time, it's just a waiting to see what kind of the, almost, in a casual way, the vibe is from both sides. And, what they decide is the best way moving forward.
And something that we are waiting to see, and something that we know will happen today, is a press conference, rather, on both sides here. We're waiting on a press conference, not only with the Loyola family, but also we know that we have a press conference with the prosecution as well.